I'm so tired of winter. I want spring to come so bad. Oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go online shopping for spring and summer clothes to make myself feel better. Oh, I like that. Oh my gosh. Oh, I like that too. Wait a minute. Let me see which one of these things I can upcycle first. I almost forgot who I was. I'm Angelina and this is Blueprint DIY, where we remake our clothes to be just as unique as us. Today I have 5 killer designer fashion pieces to upcycle this spring and summer for an awesome start on your wardrobe. And actually my 5 pieces make one amazing look at the end, so definitely don't miss the end. Why don't we start with some pants? I found these really nice plaid pants at the thrift store, and I've really been craving some high-waist plaid pants, like these Gucci ones for $1,300. So you all convinced me just to turn these into women's pants, and by that I mean just make them fit how I want them to. So I'm gonna completely take away the pleats while still keeping the pockets, like I've done on this side over here. First we're gonna take the waistband off right at the pleats all the way to right past the pocket on the side. Men's pants are typically put together really well, so it may take a minute. Next, you'll flatten out the pleats and pull and fold over the excess material until the fold meets the side seam of the pants, and pin down the fold there. Now do the same at the bottom of the pocket and pin it down. This should actually be done while wearing the pants to make sure you don't make the pants too tight. Next, take out both the inner and outer leg seam. If the fabric is strong enough, you should be able to start it with the seam ripper and then just physically rip the rest of it out. Now also back up the outer leg seam, taking out the excess from the front. My pants have long lines going down because they're plaid, so I'm going to follow one of those lines to keep everything straight. Also, it had a fold over seam for the outer leg, so I'm just going to lay the back leg piece on top of the front next to the line that I'm following and make a top stitch down the leg. Then I'll place the waistband back on and sew it down. It actually started off with more stitches, but I just added back in the double top stitch to secure the waistband. I'll also make a small top stitch across the bottom of the pocket to make sure the pockets don't begin to open up over time. And you'll definitely want to iron all your seams and pockets flat once you're done. Lastly, I decided to take out a little bit of the crotch and inner leg area. Then I'll sew and iron my hem back down. Please note that projects like these take a lot of trying on, taking apart, and re-sewing. They very rarely turn out right the very first time, so please be patient with yourself. Okay, so next up, I love upcycling men's dress shirts. So when I saw this top by Upcycles, I knew I had to give it a try. For this project, I'm actually going to use 2 men's dress shirts. I could have done this project with 1 shirt if it were a big and tall size, but the arms weren't long enough to do the gathered puff at the end with the shirts that I found at my thrift outlet. But they were only $1 each, so no worries. Alright, let's take a few measurements. First, from underneath my bust down to as long as I want the top. Second, from under my bust going up to right under my arm. Third, around my waist right under my bust. And fourth should have been my hips. I took my actual waist measurement here and it made the top too tight on my hips, so I had to add triangles later. I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, first I'm gonna lay out 1 shirt and cut across using the length measurement from my bust down. And don't forget to always add at least a 1/2 inch for seam allowance. Now I fold that piece in half and use 1/4 of my underbust waist measurement and cut up the sides. This is where I made the mistake. I should have cut the bottom by the hem wider to make room for my hips. Okay, now I use my bust up to my arm measurement and cut across the front of the remaining shirt. Then I'll start to cut the back and then curve up on each side to leave room for whatever tie I decide to do at the end. Which means that yes, the buttons will be in the back for this part. Then I'll fold that curved part in half and cut up the middle. Those will be my 2 ties. Now I'm going to take the next shirt and fold it in half back to back and front to front. I'll just start with the back because it's easier. I'm going to start right above the hem and cut a deep sleeve curve. The deeper the curve, the more puffy the sleeve will be at the top when the elastic is added. Then I'll cut the rest of the back panel out, saving as much fabric as possible. Then just cut a straight line from one end to the other. Next, I did the same thing with the front part of the shirt using the back half as a pattern. The front part of any shirt is typically not as wide, so I ended up cutting both to the limits of the front half. And those are my 2 sleeves. Now that we have all the pieces, let's put it together. I'm going to take my lower bodice portion and lay it good side to good side and sew up the sides. And here's where I had to add the triangles on each side to fit around my hips. I don't know what I was thinking when I cut it out, but I wasn't too mad because I knew I wanted to tuck it in at the end. Now open up that part and lay it good side up. Then take the upper bodice part and lay the buttons in the middle, good side to good side, and pin it down. At this point, I'm hoping that those little seam lines will hit right at my bust area in the front. And if you have anything above a B cup, you will have to add a dart right there on each side. Okay, so now that I know this concept is going in the right direction, I'm gonna finish sewing the underbust seam all the way to the buttonhole line. And if you want to sleeve the top, you could totally just hem all your edges and be done right here. But I think I'm gonna keep going. And just a little adjustment on the back, I took that back part apart and pulled the bottom part up a bit and sewed it back together to get rid of that extra fabric there. Okay, so let's attach the sleeve. While I have it on, I'll add a safety pin in the front right below the edge of my shoulder and also in the back. Then I'll sew up the sleeve seam. Next, I'll turn the sleeve right side out and pin it down with the seam in the middle of the two pins that I added when I had it on. Then I'll sew from one pin to the other, making sure to back stitch at the ends. This is very important if you don't want your sleeve to start falling off while you're wearing it. Next, I can double fold it over and sew it down, leaving enough room and a small opening on each side to slide a small pin through. Once that's done, I can get my pin and skinny elastic and push it through. Pin it down at the end and then try it on again to get it tight enough so it won't keep falling off the edge of your shoulder. But before I try it on one last time, I'm going to go ahead and cut off the ends of that curved part. I don't think I need it for the bow. And I'm going to go ahead and double fold hem all my raw edges everywhere. You'll also want to double fold and sew down the end of the sleeves to add elastic to them as well. Now I can try it on one last time and pull all my elastics and make sure it fits the way I want. Make any final adjustments and you're done. Now this outfit is definitely gonna need some accessories, so let's make a bag like this one by Simon Miller. For this outfit, I'm not really going for the crackled leather look, but I do love the style of this bag. And I do have some wooden rings off of an old purse that my mom gave me, and some green suede from an old skirt. Okay, so I cut my pieces out and I have a rectangle that is 22 inches long and 9 inches high, along with the lining that was inside the skirt. And I have my circle for the bottom. If you have the length of your rectangle, you can figure out the diameter of your circle. I added a link in the description for a converter to do it the easy way. Then I have two small rectangle pieces to connect the handles. Okay, so first, since the edges of one side of my suede rectangle is already finished, I'll fold it on top of the other and sew it together with the top stitch. Then I'll fold the lining piece in half and sew down the side. Then I'll place the edge of the lining right inside the top edge of the suede piece and sew them together with the top stitch. But before I sew them together, I'll fold over the edge of my small rectangle pieces and loop them on the rings. Then I'll add them in the seam at the appropriate locations while I'm sewing. Then I'll fold the whole thing inside out and cut the excess from the small rectangles and sew the suede circle piece to the bottom of the suede rectangle piece. I really need some of those little fabric holding clips, and after this project, I'm definitely going to order some. Now I can turn it right side out and add a piece of thick, stiff interfacing to keep the bottom firm. Then I can push the whole thing inside the lining and sew in the lining bottom, leaving a space big enough to get the wooden rings back through. Then I can pull the whole thing back through and sew the rest of the bottom lining by hand. Okay, now with the dramatic neckline on that top, I'm definitely gonna need some statement earrings. So why not try a pair like these by Balenciaga, but instead of silk, I'm gonna use this scrap of yellow linen left over from a project that you'll see in a few weeks. And I'm gonna use these silver earrings that were already starting to fade. I also purchased this other pair as an option just in case the silver didn't work out. So I'm just gonna cut a thin strip of the linen and make one end curve to a point. Then, to keep this a no-sew project, because I've already sewn so much, I'm going to add fray check to the edges at the end to keep it from fraying. Then I'll just leave the point out and begin to wrap the strip around the earring until I get to the other side. Then I'll cut the other side to a point and add fray check to that side as well. Then just tie the ends and let it dry. And don't worry if it begins to ravel while you're tying it, because you can always go back after it dries and cut the edges clean with sharp scissors. And to top it all off, let's try to make some of those amazing hair clips that I've been seeing absolutely everywhere. The nice ones can range from about $20 all the way up to over $100 like these flower ones by Mercedes Salazar. So for this project, I'm just going to use things I have around the house, like vintage buttons, old jewelry and hair clips, and rhinestones. So let's use a little creativity and come up with a few different styles. First, I found this leaf charm that probably came off the end of a necklace at some point, and I'm just going to glue it to the flat side of a hair clip with this Gorilla clear grip glue. And I'll clip them all to a piece of freezer paper so that they dry without sticking to the other side of the clip. Next up, let's use these 2 vintage pearl buttons. The back piece is plastic, so it won't be too hard to clip it off with my wire clippers. Then I'll sand down the edges to keep it as flat as possible and glue it to the flat side of the hair clip. And I can also do a very simple one by gluing a string of rhinestones to the flat side of a gold hairpin. I've actually found these gold hairpins at Target. Next, I'll take this old earring and clip off the earring part on the back with my wire clippers. Then I'll take the 2 sides apart because I want to use that connection part on the ends. I'll glue them to the flat side of the clip, making sure the connection piece is both pointing down. Once it's dry, I'll take a piece of the chain from that old necklace and add it to the connection pieces. Lastly, let's see if we can make one of those sparkly word hairpins using this rhinestone chain. I'm going to take a piece of the freezer paper and write my letters on the waxy side with the glue. Then I can lay out my rhinestones on top, pushing them together to get more stability. Once it's dry, I'll carefully peel them off the freezer paper and I can cut away any of the excess glue with an X-Acto knife. Now I'll glue a piece of ribbon to the hair clip with hot glue, and I use black ribbon because I need it to blend in with my hair. Lastly, I just use hot glue to glue the letters to the ribbon, and that's it. Before I show you the final look, if you're watching this video and like it, please share it on your social media. YouTube has taken away your ability to comment on my videos because I used to make DIY doll videos with my daughter, and they think predators are using kid videos for their sick pleasure. So they're punishing the creators, which we've never gotten a sick comment, and if it was anything inappropriate, I deleted it. But at any rate, please share as much as possible so that this video and my channel won't die. Okay, so it's finally time to reveal this whole look, and yes, I definitely feel like I'm walking a show at New York Fashion Week for sure. I am so in love with this look, and I think everything came together really well. I just wish I had worn a lighter color shoe, but other than that, I'm one happy girl. And just for grins, let's do a price comparison. I would have paid $2,791 for all of these designer pieces, but my version costs approximately $15 and a few days of sewing and crafting. And trust me, I'm not at all against buying designer, but before you do, think about which one of those pieces you could possibly upcycle. If you want to see a whole video on how I'm inspired by runway shows, then watch this video here. And make sure to subscribe and join Team Renegade if you want full tutorials on some of my projects. Okay, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.